The story starts with a middle-aged man who was hit by a truck and taken to the hospital. The doctors couldn't save him, and he heard a voice. Suddenly, he realized he was reincarnated as a baby in another world. In the months that followed, he learned that his parents' names were Paul and Zenith, who were 20 years old. Meanwhile, as a baby, Rudy still possessed the consciousness of a middle-aged man. Then he learned more about his new home, and he also was a pervert. Rudy managed to learn faster than normal babies, and he often played with his maid Lilia's underwear.
Nice.
Then Lilia told Zenith that Rudy does indecent things. Zenith didn't believe her and said that Rudy is still a little baby. A few weeks later, Rudy learned that he was reincarnated into the Middle Ages, and he missed his old computer to watch animes. Then he saw his father Paul practicing swordsmanship. Suddenly Rudy fell on his head and his mother was worried about him. Zenith checked if her baby boy was injured. Afterwards, she said that she will now heal her head with a spell. Rudy was confused and thought that his mother is insane because magic didn't exist in his previous life. Suddenly, Rudy saw magic for the first time and his head was healed. A few years passed. Rudy learned to walk and he could already speak. He tried to learn a lot every day in order to use magic as soon as possible. Then Rudy played in a chest and he found books while playing. Rudy's parents only had 5 books and he realized that he couldn't read the writing of the New World. Then another year passed and he learned secretly how to read. Rudy could already read most of the words and his parents thought that he didn't understand the content at all. Then Rudy tried to use one of the spells. So he tried to cast a water spell. Rudy was able to create a water ball that burst immediately. Later he tried to cast the spell again. As a result, he concentrated and tried to visualize the water ball in his mind. So he tried to cast the spell, but Rudy was out of MP and he fainted out. After that, Rudy practiced magic every day and he was able to increase his MP by casting the water spell several times. When he was learning wordless magic, he wondered why spells even existed. Rudy thought it was pointless to recite magic formulas when wordless magic also existed. The next morning, he practiced the water ball spell. He continued to practice and hoped to gain special power through practice as an adult. In the days that followed, we see Paul training swordsmanship. Suddenly water was poured over Paul, and he wondered where the water came from. The reason for this was Rudy, because he learned how to shoot water balls. He was happy and was able to successfully master the water ball spell. After mastering a beginner spell, he wanted to cast an advanced spell. He then recited the words of the advanced spell, and water was collected around him. Rudy was shocked and shot a huge water ball that destroyed his home. His parents immediately ran to Rudy and they were worried. His father was confused, but his mother understood that Rudy had cast a spell. His mother was delighted with Rudy's talent and wanted to hire a magic teacher for Rudy. Paul refused. Suddenly, maid Lilia suggested they should teach Rudy both. In the days that followed, a home tutor was appointed for Rudy to teach him magic. Rudy imagined his new home tutor as an old man, but his new teacher was a teenage girl. Then Roxy found out that Rudy would be her student. She thought that Paul and Zenith were stupid because she should teach magic to a little kid. Zenith heard everything and she explained to Roxy that Rudy is a genius. After that, the basics of magic were explained to Rudy, but he already has the knowledge of the basics. Followed, they wanted to recite the incantation and Rudy found it unnecessary because he could use wordless magic. After that, Rudy wanted to cast the water ball spell too, but he was distracted by Roxy's panties. He missed his water ball spell, and Roxy noticed that Rudy hadn't completed the spell. However, Roxy learned he is able to use wordless magic, and she was shocked. Later, Zenith noticed about her damaged tree, and Roxy was admonished. Roxy was depressed and thought she was going to be fired. As a result, Rudy cheered her up, but he was looking like a pervert because he was an otaku. Somehow, Rudy managed to cheer Roxy up. Suddenly, Rudy's mother showed up, and she wanted to invite Roxy to dinner to get to know her better. In the evening, they ate together, and Roxy was happy about having dinner with Rudy's family. Rudy was also happy for being reborn. In the following days, we see Rudy's old life, and he was beaten up by debt collectors because he had no money. Then he saw 3 students and a truck almost ran them over. When Rudy tried to save the students in his old life, he woke up from his nightmare. He realized he had fallen asleep because he didn't have MP left. After his nap, he heard his parents moaning, and he wanted to go teasing his parents. Suddenly, Rudy saw Roxy, who was horny by hearing the moans of his parents. Then half a year passed since Roxy became his home tutor. In the evening, Rudy was always taught the theory of magic, and he always tried to see Roxy's panties. Roxy knew Rudy was a pervert and she admonished him. Roxy explained to Rudy that she is a demon, and that's why Rudy's parents were surprised on the first day. Followed, Rudy learned that 500 years ago a war broke out and the demons called Spelled were the strongest of them. The Spelled race was banished to a demon continent, and many evil rumors existed about them. As a result, Roxy ordered Rudy to stay away from the Spelled demons. Then Roxy explained that sometimes her hair looks green because of the glare of the light. Rudy thought that he got infinite riz because he played many dating sim games. Later, Rudy tried to see Roxy while changing her clothes, but she noticed him immediately. After another 6 months, Rudy learned to master advanced magic perfectly. He also continued to train with his father in swordsmanship. Unfortunately, Rudy was only gifted in magic, and he lacked a talent for swordsmanship. A few days later, Roxy helped the other villagers water the wheat. Rudy watched the other children playing outside, but he was afraid of other people. The reason was, Rudy was always bullied in his old life. Then Roxy saw the depressed Rudy and asked what's going on, but Rudy didn't want to worry her. After that, they looked at the beautiful view of the village. Roxy told him more about the world beyond the mountains of his village. Then Roxy suggested him to find a magic school to become a great mage. Rudy didn't want to show his fears and said he is satisfied with the teaching skills of Roxy. She became very sad because she knew Rudy would one day surpass her in talent. After a year, they celebrated Rudy's birthday, and Paul gave his son a sword. He was aware that Rudy is still too young for a real sword, but Paul wished that Rudy become a strong and nice warrior. Next, Rudy received a magical grimoire from his mother, and he was delighted with her gift. Finally, Roxy gave him a wand to increase his magic power. He thanked Roxy and was happy about his new wand. Suddenly, Roxy got sad because Rudy had his final exam the next day. Rudy was afraid to go outside of his home. Then he remembered his old life. He was always bullied by the other students and wished to get some superpower to change his life. Besides, he was afraid to go outside, and the other students didn't stop of bullying him. Unfortunately, he hid in his room until he was a middle-aged man. The next day, Rudy had his last day with Roxy, and he was afraid to go outside. Roxy thought Rudy was afraid of horses, and she rode with him together. Rudy was afraid to leave his home because of the bad memories. When Rudy left his home for the first time, he was nervous. Then he realized that they weren't all staring at him. They all were staring at Roxy. The reason was all of the villagers knew Roxy, and they all greeted her politely. As a result, Rudy was able to overcome his fear to go outside, and he got to know the beautiful nature. After that, Rudy's last final exam started, and Roxy wanted to use a sacred level water magic. She was only able to cast the spell once, and Rudy should learn to use it too. Then Roxy started reciting the spell, and she caused a strong thunderstorm. Suddenly it started to rain, and the thunderstorm got stronger. As Roxy concentrated the magic, their horse Caravaggio was struck by lightning. Roxy immediately stopped the spell, and she instantly healed Caravaggio. Roxy apologized, and she wanted to see Rudy use the spell. Then Rudy took out his wand, and Roxy protected Caravaggio. So Rudy started to cast the strong water magic, and he also created a storm cloud. While casting the spell, Rudy was sad, because he had to say goodbye to Roxy after the final test. Followed, he wanted to show Roxy how much he learned, and he was able to cast the spell successfully. Later on, Roxy praised him for conjuring up an even more powerful spell than herself. After that, Roxy congratulated her student, and he was appointed to a sacred level water mage. In the evening, Paul and Zenith wanted Roxy to stay with them, but Roxy turned down the offer. She wanted to learn more about magic, and Rudy's parents accepted her decision. Then Roxy said goodbye to Rudy, and he received a necklace as a present. She said the pendant is a lucky charm. Roxy then said goodbye to Rudy's family, and they were all sad. Rudy ran after her and thanked her for teaching him so much. In the days that followed, Rudy looked for panties that he had been stolen from Roxy. Meanwhile, his parents were fooling around in the garden outside their home. Then Rudy showed up, and he asked for permission to play outside. His parents were happy that he decided for the first time to play outside. Then Paul told his son to be nice to neighbors' kids. After that, Rudy went to play outside, and his parents wished him a lot of fun. Later, Rudy was exploring a forest, and he heard boys' voices, who called someone a demon. Suddenly, someone wanted to throw a stone against the bullied kid. Rudy immediately ran and stopped the bad boy with a water ball. They were angry at Rudy and tried to attack him with mud balls. Rudy was superior to them, and he was able to beat them away with his water ball spells. After that, Rudy saw a person shaking, and he was impressed that the bullied boy looked so cute. Rudy wanted to help him and clean him up with his water ball spell. The boy thought that Rudy was trying to bully him, but he realized that Rudy didn't mention to harm him. Then Rudy checked whether the person is a spelled demon. So Rudy was relieved that the little boy wasn't a spelled demon, and he noticed the ears. Later, Rudy found out that the boy is a half-elf, but neither of his parents had green hair. Suddenly the boy cried, and Rudy tried to cheer him up. Then the bullied kid asked why Rudy has helped him. Rudy replied, because he wants to help the weaker ones, and offered him to be his new friend. Then Rudy introduced himself, and he found out that the boy's name was Sylph. In the afternoon they played together, and Rudy found out that Sylph had never met a nice friend in his life. After that, Sylph asked if Rudy could teach him to use the water ball spell. So Rudy decided to teach his new friend some magic spells. In the evening, Rudy said goodbye, and he went home late. Paul was waiting for him and was furious against his son Rudy for a reason. Rudy was then accused of beating up a boy of the neighbors. Rudy wanted to explain to Paul that there was a misunderstanding, but he wasn't listening. Rudy became angry too, and he was very rebellious towards his father. As a result, Rudy was slapped by his beloved father, and he was lying on the ground. So Rudy was disappointed in his father's behavior because he didn't trust him. Then Paul got sad, and he found out about the story that his son had protected someone who was bullied. He apologized to Rudy, and they had their first family argument. His father then wondered why he had argued with his son. Paul could only think of the injured boy next door, and he was afraid that Rudy would turn evil, because he can already use high-level magic with his young age. During the night, Paul was still ashamed of his behavior towards Rudy, and he was afraid that Rudy didn't love him anymore. Followed the next summer started, and Rudy was training his sword art. Also in the 6 months, Sylph managed to learn strong spells. Sylph learned quickly, and she noticed that Rudy wasn't reciting the spells. Then Sylph asked Rudy to teach him wordless magic too. As a result, Rudy tried to teach Sylph, and Sylph immediately managed to learn how to use wordless magic. So Sylph tried to figure out how Rudy cast wordless magic, and she failed. Rudy didn't believe in Sylph, because he also got trouble with casting wordless magic. But Sylph managed to learn wordless magic without any problems. Later the two played together in the farming fields. However, Rudy realized how pretty Sylph is, and he was jealous of Sylph's looks. Suddenly it started to rain, and Sylph was invited to Rudy's home. Maid Lilia had already run the water in the bathroom, and she noticed that Sylph is a girl. Then Rudy wanted to go bathing with Sylph. He wondered why Sylph didn't want to undress himself. Then Rudy just stripped Sylph her clothes down, and Rudy didn't understand why she didn't want to take off her panties. Rudy took off her panties by force, and he realized that Sylph is a girl. After that, Paul was bathing with his beloved son, and he tried to cheer him up. Rudy felt guilty because he knew that his behavior was wrong. Following this, Rudy was on his way to apologize for his rude behavior. He said he was sorry for thinking of her as a boy, and she started crying even more. Paul was shocked how stupid his son is, because he totally screwed his apology up. The next morning, Rudy trained with his father, and he lost immediately. Paul noticed his son have some problems with girls. So Paul gave his son some advice about women. As a result, Rudy understood what he had done wrong, and his father was able to successfully encourage him. Suddenly Sylphie visited them, and Rudy tried to follow his father's advice, but he acted very creepy. So he just tried to be honest with Sylphie, and he said that he misses to play with Sylphie. She accepted the apology and wanted to play with Rudy again. Meanwhile, Rudy was happy to have a cute girl as a childhood friend. They got along again and were able to have a good time laughing together. A few weeks later, Rudy found out that Zenith is pregnant again, and the whole family was happy. In the afternoon at lunch, Maid Lilia suddenly told them she was pregnant too, and Paul was shocked by the news. So Paul apologized for cheating on Zenith with Maid Lilia. In the evening, Zenith cried and couldn't believe that Paul had betrayed her with Maid Lilia. Then Zenith asked Lilia about her plan, and she replied she will stay and help her with give birth. After that, she wanted to travel home, but Zenith knew she wouldn't survive with her baby. Zenith didn't know what she should do now. Rudy was hearing everything, and he already considered Maid Lilia as part of his family. Then Rudy tried to put all the blame on his father, and his mother believed Rudy. But Maid Lilia said he was innocent. After that, Rudy tried to convince his mother to keep Lilia as their maid. Zenith was still sad, and she accepted Rudy's decision to let Lilia stay in her house. So Zenith told Lilia that she is now part of her family. Also, Zenith wanted to scold Paul for cheating on her. Meanwhile, Lilia was grateful about the help of Rudy. The next morning, Paul vented his anger on Rudy, and Lilia wondered why Rudy had helped her. Then we see how the problem started, because Lilia was very horny every night. The reason was Paul and Zenith moaned every night, and she needed some contacts with men too. Then we see Rudy as a baby, and he was playing every day with Lilia's panties. She found him very creepy in the past. She always saw Rudy as a pervert, but since yesterday, made Lilia regarded him as a saint who saved her baby's life. A year later, Rudy's new siblings were born, and Paul played with them every day. Suddenly, the two girls started crying, and the mothers immediately took care of them. Rudy watched the parents babysitting, and he wanted to be a really cool big brother. Since the birth of his siblings, Rudy got to know Lilia better. Also, he learned that Lilia and Paul had known each other since childhood. Then Rudy was called to sword training. He knew his father was a Rizzler, but he still respected his father because he is very strong. Then Rudy tried to attack him with magic, but his father had observation haki and was able to dodge Rudy's attack. As a result, Rudy lost and his father made fun of him, so Rudy teased his father. Suddenly Paul asked if his mother would be angry if he now sleeps with Lilia. Rudy said he shouldn't do it, but Rudy was a man too, and he understood his father. He knew his father was scum, but he liked him very much. Suddenly Paul asked if he wanted to go to school someday. Paul said he didn't enjoy school anyway, because there were only nobles. Rudy found out that noble girls don't do sports, and they become very fat in the future. Then Paul advised his son that he should only try to focus on one girl. Later on, Rudy realized that Sylphie will soon overtake him with her knowledge of magic. Suddenly, Sylphie noticed that he was thinking about something the whole time. Rudy said that he would like to go to school, but Sylphie became sad. She didn't want Rudy to leave her and started to cry. Rudy cheered her up, and he had no intention of leaving her. In the evening, he already dreamed of marrying Sylphie to have a lot of fun with her. Suddenly, his father appeared, and he had a letter for Rudy. Roxy told him that she had a new student, who was very similar to him. Her new student was also a pervert, and often stole her panties. Roxy was often groped by him, and she punished him. She also suggested Rudy to go to the Renoa magic school to learn more about magic. Paul was impressed with Roxy as she became a Water King class mage. Then he asked Rudy if he had really stolen Roxy's panties. That night, Rudy thought about Roxy's words about going to a magic academy. The next morning, he had breakfast with his family, and he asked his father a favor. Paul was surprised that Rudy was planning to go to Renoa magic school. Then he asked his father if he could go to magic school with Sylphie. He asked his father to pay the fees for the two, but he refused. The reason was that Rudy's family didn't even have enough money to pay the school fees for one person. Then Rudy asked him to find a job so that he could also pay Sylphie's school fees. Paul wanted to help his son and supported him with his idea. The next day, a female beastman showed up. Rudy was impressed by beastman Jelane's sexy body. Then Zenith greeted her old adventurer friend Jelane. She met baby girl Nora and said that luckily she doesn't look like Paul. Suddenly Zenith and Lilia said goodbye to Rudy, and Paul explained the circumstances to him. As a result, Paul started fighting against his son, and Rudy tried to defeat him with magic. Paul was very talented with the sword, and he was able to corner his son. In the fight, Paul showed his true strength. He wanted to show Rudy that he lacked strength. However, Rudy was knocked out and woke up in a carriage. Then he met Jelane and he was confused. He didn't know why he rode in a carriage with her. Followed we see that Rudy wanted to know the reason why he was driving with Jelane in the carriage. Suddenly, Jelane threw to him a letter from his father and asked him to read it out loud. In the letter was written that Paul first made fun of Jelane, calling her a gorilla. Jelane got angry, but Rudy managed to calm her down and said he was only joking. Then Rudy found out that his job is to teach magic to a noble girl. After that, Rudy also found out that his father had seduced Jelane before and also told Rudy that she is a master of sword fighting. Suddenly Rudy found out he would be separated from Sylphie for a while, and he was angry with his father's decision. The next day he arrived at City of Roa, and he was surprised about all the maids were beastmen. Followed Rudy was served grape juice, and he thanked the servant. So he drank the prime tropical juice, and the house owner showed up. Rudy introduced himself, and he learned the manners of the nobility. Then Philip told him he is the cousin of his father, and Philip noticed Rudy didn't know much about his task. However, Rudy was praised for being a strong mage, and Philip hoped he is able to teach his daughter magic. Also, he warned about his daughter behave. Philip said his daughter doesn't like meeting new people. When Rudy entered Eris's room, he was immediately nervous about her arrogant appearance. He introduced himself to Eris, but she immediately started nagging him because he's 2 years younger. Rudy was immediately slapped by her, and he got angry. So Rudy decided to slap her back and made her angry. Suddenly, Eris hit him in the face with a powerful punch and she turned into a wild animal. She was beating up Rudy, but he managed to escape by using wind magic. Then Rudy was scared and couldn't believe that his father sent him to a psycho girl who tried to kill him. In the evening, Philip laughed and asked Rudy if he wanted to give up his job. Rudy said he won't give up, because otherwise his father will laugh at him. Then Rudy found out none of the previous teachers wanted to teach Eris. Rudy considered to beat her up with magic. He knew how dangerous Eris was and tried to find another solution, so he had the idea to arouse Eris's interest in magic. During the night, Rudy was tied up and he wanted to show Eris that magic is very useful. Rudy explained to her they had been kidnapped and that she could easily burn the bonds with fire magic. Meanwhile, Eris was angry and she complained. Suddenly an evil man appeared and Rudy was impressed by the staging. The man was angry with Eris and he kicks her against the wall. Followed Eris tried to hit the man, but he dodged all the attacks and stamped her head into the ground. Rudy shocked and he didn't know what was happening. Suddenly Rudy was also hit and he still thought that everything was staged. Afterwards, Eris cried and she lay on the ground badly injured. Rudy wanted to help her and he used healing magic to heal some of her injuries. However, two criminals discussed whether to kill Eris. Then Rudy realized that they were kidnapped by real criminals and he could just kill them with magic. He decided against the idea because he didn't want to teach Eris the wrong value of magic. Eris was still injured and couldn't escape without help. The men then tried to enter the room, but Rudy blocked the door with earth magic. Eris was desperate and she didn't want to be left alone. Time was pressing and she promised not to cause any trouble for Rudy. Suddenly, the bandits noticed that the children fled the room. Meanwhile, Rudy healed Eris completely and she was able to move again. After that, they drove home and Eris thought the criminals are hunting them. When they arrived in the city of Roa, Rudy was happy that Eris learned how useful magic is. Then Rudy saw the servants of Eris, her father, and they ran towards him. Suddenly Eris was kidnapped again, and Rudy immediately pursued the kidnappers. Rudy used powerful earth magic to block their path. The bandit then planned to kill Eris with a sword. Rudy wanted to attack the bandits with a fire spell. Philip's servant wanted to stop him and made him an offer. Rudy got a deal, which allowed him to get enough money for his school fees. Then Rudy said that the offer sounds very good, and he learned that the servant hated Eris. The bandits thought Rudy was making a deal with him, but he refused. So Rudy shot his fire magic in the air and caused a firework. Eris was surprised by Rudy's decision to save her. Then Rudy charged at the enemies, and he attacked his enemies with earth magic. So he was able to free Eris from the criminals. The criminals were able to fend off his attack and tried to kill Rudy. When Rudy was able to pin an enemy to the ground, he was confident he could win with his fire magic. Suddenly, a sword flew at him and he knew he couldn't dodge the enemy's attack. At the last moment, Jelaine destroyed the sword and she began her attack against the opponents. The criminals didn't stand a chance against her and were immediately slashed by Jelaine. After that, Jelaine caught the servant of Philip's family and he was scared by seeing the Queen of Swords. Later, Philip's servant was caught and they returned to Eris Manor. Jelaine immediately pointed out that his servant was the culprit. Philip immediately ordered Jelaine to take care of the criminal. Meanwhile, Eris was angry and horrified by the bad memories of the incident. Rudy understood that his plan had failed. Rudy gave up and wanted to go home to his parents. Suddenly, Eris stopped him and she allowed Rudy to call her by her first name. She also wanted Rudy to stay in their home. So they went home and Rudy was very happy. The next day, Philip praised Rudy for saving Eris, and Rudy found out that he is a noble too. In addition, he should say that Jelaine has taken care of the case. After that, Hilda showed up and she met Paul's son. Rudy introduced himself and immediately stared at Hilda's large breasts. Suddenly, Philip's father showed up and he wanted to get to know Rudy. He was surprised that Rudy had good manners unlike his father. Afterwards, Saros wanted to hear the story of how he saved Eris, but Rudy lied and told him Ghislaine saved Eris. Then Saros learned that his son was to blame for the lie. As a result, Philip was beaten up by his father because he wanted to give Rudy more credit. In addition, Rudy understood why Eris is so powerful, because her grandpa was a beast too. Suddenly Eris was called to them, so Eris immediately appeared and Saros politely ordered his niece to ask Rudy for magic lessons. She listened to her grandfather's words and tried to ask Rudy for a favor. Rudy was confused, but Saros was proud of his niece. Then Rudy learned Saros has a penchant for beastmen, and that's why Eris made such a funny pose. The next morning, Rudy had sword training with Eris and they were taught by Swordmaster Jelaine. Then in the afternoon, Eris and Jelaine were taught magic together and Eris had a lot of fun. Followed many days passed and Rudy taught Jelaine math and reading. Meanwhile, Eris was messing around and she caused a huge problem with a fire spell. Rudy immediately put out the fire and wanted to teach her math, but Eris ran away. Then Rudy looked for Eris to teach her reading and writing. Ever since Rudy became her home tutor, she tried to escape him every day when she needed to practice reading and writing. Rudy tried to wake her up, but she didn't wake up. She didn't wake up, and he had another idea. Rudy wanted to steal her panties to wake her up. Suddenly Eris woke up, and she noticed Rudy wanted to steal her panties. So she immediately beaten Rudy up and he learned not to mess with Eris. Later, Rudy cried in front of Jelaine and hoped she will find a solution to get Eris motivated for studying. As a result, Eris studied diligently, but quickly lost interest in learning. Following, Jelaine told her a story about her life as adventurous. She was able to get the attention of Eris with her story. Then Jelaine explained that after Rudy's parents got married and left the group, she always had problems with money because she couldn't count. One day, she didn't even have money left for food, and she ate excrement from a monster. Rudy was shocked, and Jelaine wanted to learn math because of this reason. As a result, Eris was motivated to continue learning. In the afternoon, Rudy trained with Eris' swordsmanship, and Jelaine tried to give them advice to improve their skills. Rudy couldn't defend her attacks. Following this, Eris used all her power, and she beat Rudy with her wooden sword. After sparring, Eris said he should train more. After that, Jelaine noticed that Rudy often shied away from enemy attacks. He replied that he was scared and was slapped by Eris. Eris said that she looks down on him for these reasons. Then Eris wanted to keep training with Rudy to make him stronger. In the evening, Rudy wanted to go to bed immediately, but he still had to prepare for tomorrow's lessons. Then he wondered what Sylphie was doing at the moment. The next day, Rudy taught Eris reading and writing, but she was acting weird. He forgot to schedule a break in his class, and she got angry. A few days later, Eris wanted to go into town, and Rudy hoped that she wouldn't be kidnapped again so that Jelaine would have to rescue her. Then Rudy complimented her cute outfit, but she hit him on the head. However, they were in the city to have fun. Suddenly, Rudy was approached by a man, and he wanted to sell him something valuable. The seller showed Rudy a magic potion, which allowed him to seduce all women. Unfortunately, Eris interrupted him, and he couldn't buy the love potion. Then Rudy explained to her that he compares the prices of the items to make money with dropshipping. Eris knew nothing about e-commerce, but Jelaine would have made a good businesswoman. Then Eris tried to prove that she is also a businesswoman, but Rudy knew she had no idea about money calculations. Later, Rudy looked at the prices of books, and Eris offered to buy him the books with the money of her grandfather. Rudy noticed Eris had no understanding of money. So Rudy taught her the lesson of rich dad, poor dad, and she understood the value of money. Also, Rudy understood she just wanted to be nice. So he wanted to teach her even more about money. She was happy and blushed. After that, Rudy saw a floating fortress in the sky. Rudy learned the Perugia's fortress had defeated the demon god Laplace. Suddenly, Rudy remembered. He had heard the story from the book his parents had read to him. Rudy was surprised by the story and wanted to learn more about the floating sky fortress. The next day, Eris had a lot of fun studying, and she bought Rudy a present. He got a love potion as gift and was shocked. Rudy was nervous and didn't want to tell Eris that she bought him a love potion. When Rudy wanted to leave, Jelaine stopped him. Rudy unintentionally dropped his potion and called the potion by the name. Then Rudy tried to run away, but he was caught immediately. Eris tickled him to learn more about the love potion, and he was punished. In the followed months, Eris trained with Jelaine's sword fighting. In the end, Jelaine praised her student and told Eris that she could reach advanced rank soon. After that, Rudy taught them how to make money with bitcoins and also taught them to cast strong magic spells. So they learned a lot by Rudy, and were happy. Followed, we see Rudy he was finished with to create a Roxy Barbie edition. Suddenly maid Edna wanted to ask him for a favor. So Rudy learned Eris will be 10 years old soon. The main event of that party will be a dance performed by Eris. Rudy laughed by the thoughts about Eris dancing. Then she told him she is worried because Eris can't dance. As a result, Rudy was asked for teaching Eris some dancing moves. He accepted and was ready to teach Eris dancing moves. On the next day, Rudy discovered a book, which was written in beast god language. Philip told him beast god language is the best language for flirting with beast men. Rudy knew their charm of the cute female beast people, and he loved their fluffy ears. So Philip was proud of Rudy and knew they were blood related. Followed, Rudy decided to learn the beast god language, and he wrote a letter for Roxy. Several days passed and Rudy had problems by learning the demon god language. Suddenly he heard the voice of Eris, and he learned Eris got problems to learn the dancing moves. Maid Edna was worried and she wanted Rudy to convince her for going to her dancing lessons. So Rudy found Eris and asked about her problems, but she kicked him in the face. Followed, he tried to convince her for going back, but she didn't want to learn dancing. Rudy understood her feelings because he was in his old life a loser. Suddenly she admitted to admires him because he could do everything with ease. He replied he wasn't able to do everything perfect, so he tried to study to master everything. Followed, he was able to cheer Eris up and she went back to her dance lessons. Following this, they both danced, but Eris danced like a gorilla, so Rudy was injured by dancing with Eris. Later he studied beast god language and Jelaine helped him with his studying. So Rudy was able to learn a lot, and Eris also went to the dancing lessons. Also, Rudy sold his created Barbie on a merchant, and he got a gold coin. In the followed days he danced with Eris and she was able to learn the noble dance moves. In the evening, Rudy was exhausted for studying every day. Suddenly his Amazon package was delivered because he was a Prime member. Followed, he got a letter from Roxy, and she thanked him for writing her every day. Then we see Roxy. She got a new student who was a pervert too. He grabbed her breasts and she burned him down with a strong fire spell. Then she wanted to help Rudy learning the demon god language, so she gave him some advice for studying. Following this, her student showed Roxy a Barbie, which looks like her. So Rudy was surprised that Roxy's new student bought his self-made Barbie. Following this, he discovered her advices and was motivated to study more. On the next day, he was dancing with Eris again, but she had trouble like always. Maid Edna lied to her and told her she is ready for the event tomorrow. But Rudy was worried because he knew Maid Edna lied to Eris. Then, we see the event of Eris and the nobles were served expensive dishes. Rudy enjoyed the tasty food and he saw Eris in a beautiful dress. Sauros welcomed the nobles and introduced them to his niece Eris. So every one of the nobles congratulated her for becoming 10 years old. Suddenly Sauros led the main event and he said, if someone wants his favor, he should take his granddaughter's hand. So they both started to dance together, but the boy wasn't a good match for Eris. Followed, they started to dance very good, but Eris unintentionally increased the speed. As a result, she tripped and Rudy was worried. Followed, she wanted to continue her dance, but everyone looked down on Eris. Edna and Rudy were worried because she ruined her family's reputation. Then Rudy asked her for a dance because he didn't want to let her down. The nobles were angry and whispered behind their back. Followed, Rudy started the dance with Eris, but she was nervous and tripped again. Rudy learned she was nervous for screwing up the dance, so Rudy didn't give up and found a solution for the problem. He got the idea to use his plus ultra dancing skills, and they were able to perform a beautiful dance. As a result, Rudy was rizzing the whole noble main event and made Eris blush. Everyone were impressed of their performance, and Sauros was also proud of them both. After that, Edna asked Rudy about his secret. So he explained Eris got plus ultra by training with Jelaine. Because of this reason, he could manage to dance with Eris. Suddenly, 3 girls tried to seduce the isekai Riz master. Then Philip gave him the advice to use protection for having fun with the girls. In the evening, he wanted to gift his students some wands. Followed, Jelaine was very grateful for the magic wand of Rudy. After that, Eris also got a wand, and she thanked Rudy for his gift. Suddenly, Eris looked at Jelaine. Rudy said she also expects to receive a gift from Jelaine as her student. Eris was very happy about the ring and she kept it as a treasure. The next day, Rudy woke up and he discovered Eris in his bed. So he got the idea to tease her a bit, but he immediately changed his mind. Followed, he was outside and he saw something suspicious. Then he heard some voices of a moaning woman. Sauros sensed Rudy and he had a lot of fun with a female maid. Sauros wanted to show him something in the sky. He didn't know what the floating thing was and he started praying. Following this, 2 years passed. Rudy managed to learn new languages and had a lot of fun. Then he watched Eris by her sword training and she reached the advanced rank in sword god style. Suddenly he discovered the floating thing in the sky was changing his size. However, Rudy wanted to go outside and he saw Eris with a maid. He was curious why they were talking behind his back. Suddenly he learned Eris wanted to prepare a party for Rudy's 10th birthday. Then Rudy was deep in thought. He knew he wasn't born in the main family. As a result, Rudy didn't get a big event like Eris. Suddenly we saw the mom of Eris, and she looked like having a bad mood every time she saw Rudy. Then the maids prepared the birthday party for Rudy. Jelaine tried to distract him because the maids asked for more time. Rudy wanted to have a snack, but his birthday party wasn't prepared. He immediately understood that they were preparing his birthday party. Followed, he showed a Barbie, which looked like his swordmaster. He purposely forgot to create her tail and wanted to see Jelane's booty. Then she pulled her pants down, and Rudy shocked by seeing her thong. She was ready for the Arnold's Physique bodybuilder competition. Suddenly a maid appeared and saw Rudy playing with Jelane's butt cheeks. After that, they celebrated Rudy for becoming 10 years old, and he was surprised. Eris presented him with flowers, and he started to cry. The reason is he thought on the beginning they didn't like him, but everyone was so nice to him. So Sauros said he will punish the main family. Rudy's behave was staged, and Eris tried to cheer him up with a big surprise. He thought he will be reunited with his family, but they couldn't make it. So Eris' mother tried to cheer him up, and he learned that she also loves him. Suddenly she asked Rudy to become Eris' future husband. She was also a troublemaker, and they tried to stop her nonsense too. Following this, Eris got the gift for Rudy. He learned Eris bought him an off-white wand, which was used by the strongest mages. He was surprised and grateful for the gift of Eris. After that, they celebrated the birthday party of Rudy together. He enjoyed the birthday party, and everyone of Eris' family congratulated him for becoming 10 years old. In the night, Philip told Rudy that Eris had 2 brothers. So he learned all sons with the Boreas blood were raised in the head of the family's household. As a result, he learned why Hilda hated him first, because he was allowed to stay in their mansion, but her own sons were taken away. Followed, Philip asked Rudy if he wanted to marry Eris. Rudy thought it was a joke, but Philip wasn't joking. Suddenly, he offered Rudy to pop the cherries of his daughter and became the next head of the main family. Rudy didn't want to involved in the family problems, and they rejected the offer of Philip. Then Rudy was on his way to his bedroom, and he immediately regretted to reject the offer. Arrived in his bedroom, he was shocked to see Eris, who was waiting for Rudy. Eris replied, she thought he is lonely, and she wanted to sleep with him tonight. Rudy got isekai riz and had naughty thoughts. Suddenly he started to shot his load and started to kiss Eris. But he just imagined everything and realized he didn't started. However, he couldn't withstand, because he was just a man who wanted to get some love. Eris was nervous, and she hadn't experience with men. Followed, Rudy started to kiss and touch her. She could sense Rudy's riz aura and waited for having fun. Suddenly he touched her and she rejected him. Rudy was beaten up by Eris' gorilla power and he was fainted out. After that, he was deep in thought and he didn't know what he did wrong. So he thought he misunderstood the signals of her. Also, he thought she just wanted to be nice to him. Then he wanted to apologize to Eris, but she wasn't angry at him. She accepted his apology and she told him she aren't ready for making babies now, and she told him he can try it again after became 15 years old. So Rudy was happy, because she wasn't angry at him. Also, he celebrated his victory, because he was allowed to pop her cherry if he turned 15 years old. He was motivated, but he remembered about his promise with his childhood friend Sylphie. Followed, we see Sylphie visiting Rudy's family, and she always played with his little sisters. Sylphie wanted to send Rudy a necklace of his family and she asked about Lilia's gift for Rudy. Then Aisha wanted to play with Sylphie and she was very happy for being praised. Zenith and Lilia were happy to see Sylphie acting like a big sister for the 2 girls. Also, they were glad that she could stop the bullies of their town without Rudy's help. Later, Zenith scared her little daughter and Nora began to cry. Then Paul arrived home and he saw with his family the storm clouds. In the meantime, Roxy was exhausted for teaching her creepy student. Then she also looked to the sky and saw the storm clouds. After that, we see a mysterious guy who was on a mountain. Suddenly, he was attacked by a huge dragon with his breath of fire. The mysterious guy was unharmed and demonstrated his power. He just looking in the eyes of the dragon, and he could scared him. Suddenly, he was surprised about the storm clouds. Another person also discovered the storm clouds, caused by an absurd amount of mana. She was Kishirika, and called himself the Great Emperor of the Demon World. Then we see the palace of Laplace, and he sent a servant to eliminate the danger. However, Rudy was outside with his friends and he wanted to test his new wand. Then he started to cast his strongest spell, but he stopped. Suddenly, Jelaine used her green Rinnegan eye, and she saw an attack coming. Followed, they were attacked, and Jelaine tried to protect her students. Suddenly, she was fighting against one of Lord Perugia's servant. Then they could clear the misunderstanding, and Rudy was confused. He was deep in thought, but the weird thing in the sky disappeared. Suddenly, the floating thing exploded, and Jelaine tried to protect them, but she didn't manage to reach them. So Rudy wanted to run away, but went back to protect Eris. Followed, Rudy was in his old body again, and he met the man god. Suddenly, the man god explained he just had this fat body, because this is his mental body. Man god wanted to give him some advice, but Rudy refused, because he was scared for being tricked. Rudy was confused and he learned that the massive mana disaster transported him to the demon continent. Following this, he wanted to hear the advice of Man God. As a result, he got the information: when he awake, he will meet a man and they should help each other. After that, Rudy woke up and he was happy to be alive. Then he saw Eris sleeping and wondered where Jelaine is. Suddenly he saw a spelled demon with a scary face. Rudy was shocked because everybody told them to flee by seeing a spelled demon. So he was ready to cast a strong spell, but he noticed the spelled demon didn't want to hurt him. Suddenly Rudy used his demon god language to greet him, and the spelled demon was amazed. Followed fake Zoro ordered by Wish explained Rudy how he had found them on the ground and saved them. Rudy learned the spelled demon saved them both and didn't saw another person. After that, the spelled demon was surprised because Rudy was not feared against him. Rudy replied he wasn't scared because he saved them. Followed Rudy told Roger about the mana disaster, and he tried to cheer up Rudy. Suddenly Eris woke up and she was instantly scared to see a spelled demon. She tried to call Jelaine for help and she started to cry in front of them both. Ruijerd said this is the normal reaction of a person who met for the first time a spelled demon. Followed then, Eris introduced herself and she started unintentionally to be rude. She was scared and hid behind Rudy, but she learned Ruijerd is a kind person. Later, Eris complained about the lies against spelled demons, and she was surprised to learn that spelled demons aren't monsters. Suddenly Rudy said she can ask Ruijerd to become a friend of hers. She was very shy, so Ruijerd asked her first to become friends. As a result, both were befriended now, and Rudy thought about how to get home. In the next morning, Eris was excited to start their journey in the demon continent. In addition, a new journey of Rudy started and the hot weather exhausted them. Also, Ruijerd defeated a huge monster and the both were impressed. After that, Eris asked Ruijerd how he could manage to sense the dangerous monster. Ruijerd replied he could sense the monster with the eye of his forehead. Then he said he will escort them and protecting them both on the journey. Arrived in a new demon village, Ruijerd was arguing with a blue hair demon. The reason is the villager thinks the humans look suspicious. Ruijerd was angry and told him he should call the chief. Then Rudy learned the demons were able to use telepathy and the chief was called. Followed, Rudy greeted the chief of the village and he was glad that he learned demon god language. After that, he was asked about his necklace and one of the demons was shocked to hear Rudy is the student of Roxy because he was Roxy's dad. Then they were allowed to enter the village and Rudy shocked. He saw many female demons who looked like Roxy. In addition, Roxy's father said Roxy left the village 20 years ago and demons lives longer than ordinary humans. Followed, Rudy told Roxy's dad she is now a tutor in another human kingdom. However, Rudy tried to eat the weird-looking soup and Raucus learned about the mysterious light. Followed, Eris was asleep and Rudy had a naughty mind. Then Ruijerd told his friend Raucus he will escort the children's, but the problem is he wasn't able to enter cities. Rudy learned he had many problems as a spelled demon. Also, Ruijerd has a heart for children and saved a little girl in the past. After that, Raucus told Rudy about Ruijerd's goal to dispel the spelled demon tribe's poor reputation. Rudy asked about the war and the bad rumors about spelled demons. Suddenly, Ruijerd got angry and said the rumors against spelled demon is wrong. Rudy learned they were in the past allies of the hero Laplace, but one day he betrayed the spelled demons. As a result, Laplace propagated that all spelled demons are dangerous. Rudy was surprised about the truth story, so Ruijerd told them the spears which Laplace gave them were cursed with a strong spell. In addition, the spears controlled the spelled demons to kill their own family. Ruijerd was angry, and as the leader of the spelled demon, he wanted to show the world the truth. Suddenly, Rudy decided to help Ruijerd by his goal to dispel the spelled demon tribe's poor reputation. On the next day, Rudy said goodbye, and he was amazed by Rokari. The reason is she was 102 years old, but looked like in her mid-20s. Then Rudy told the parents of Roxy that he wanted to be Roxy's future husband. As a result, Roxy's dad gave Rudy a sword as a gift. Then Eris thanked them for the kindness of Roxy's parents. After that, they started to continue their journey, and Rudy looked forward to help Ruijerd by his goal. So Ruijerd looked forward too, because he wanted to escort the two kids safe to their homeland. In the next days, Eris tried out the new sword, and she defeated many strong demon wolves. Rudy asked her to leave him some, but she already defeated them all. In the evening, Eris said she always dreamed to live like that. Rudy didn't feel her dream and he missed to eat some rice with grilled beef. On the next day, they arrived in a new demon town which was called Rikarisu. Then Rudy was excited to see many different demons. Eris was amazed too, and Ruijerd explained them. In the demon continent are many different demon tribes. Also, he learned Spell Demon got the nickname Dead End, and they need a solution to enter with Ruijerd the city. He decided to leap over those cliffs, but Rudy stopped him. Then Rudy had a brilliant idea, and he was able to sneak Ruijerd into the city. Eris was immediately amazed by the beautiful city. Followed Rudy had the plan to register as an adventurer to earn some money. Then we see adventurer playing together and fooling around. Rudy and Eris appeared, and they dressed up like punks, but nobody were scared. Rudy's plan was a failure, and he called Ruijerd to enter the house. Rudy told them he is a famous spelled demon, but nobody believed him. All adventurer were laughing and looked down on Rudy. He was happy because his plan worked by dyeing Ruijerd hair blue. After that, guild receptionist registered them with the names Dead End. Rudy was aroused because the rectionist got 3 boobs. Then Eris is excited to live an adventurer life, but she couldn't read the quests. Rudy chose a C-rank quest, and another adventurer made fun of him. The reason was he called his party Dead End, and the adventurer thought Rudy is stupid. Suddenly a frog demon started to provoke Ruijerd, but he immediately felt his feared aura. As a result, he didn't make a fuss, and Ruijerd didn't beat up the demon. Outside, Eris was complaining because she wanted to slay some dragons. But Rudy said they should celebrate the day, because nobody were able to identify Ruijerd as an spell demon. Later, Eris saw blue light in the sky and she was amazed. In the night, Rudy was booking a room for 3-person. Suddenly 3 guys tried to approach Eris, but she ignored the demon boys. She refused and she punched the boy in the face. She was furious because her new coat was broken. Rudy immediately stopped Eris for beating up the boy. Then Rudy healed the demon boy, and he apologized for his behavior. Rudy learned the boys just wanted to offer them both to join his party. So Rudy told them he has his own party called Dead End. Then Kurt wished him good luck, but he said he will be the best adventurer party. Later in the room, Rudy told Eris he will repair her beloved coat tomorrow, and he was able to cheer her up. Also, he wanted to find a good quest to earn money for food. Suddenly, he met Man God again in his dreams. He was suspicious like always, and he told him his next tip. Rudy said he should make it quick, because he hates to be in his old body. Following this, he gave Rudy the advice to accept the quest to find a lost kitten. Rudy woke up and he saw Eris watching the sky. She was worried and asked Rudy if they will make it home. Also, she was worried about Ghislaine and her family, but Rudy could cheer her up. On the next day, they were searching a kitten, and Ruijerd used his third eye power to find the kitten. He sensed the aura of the kitten and led them to a cave. Eris said the place stinks, but they need to enter the cave to save a little kitten. On the way to find a kitten, Rudy realized the kitten is a grown puma. Rudy would prefer Nike over Puma, but he accepted his fate. Suddenly, they heard some voices of a group of demons. Rudy and his friends were hiding, and he started an attack against the bandits. However, the bandits were caught by a spell of Rudy. Ruijerd and Eris immediately defeated the enemies and they caught them. Followed, Rudy tried to get some information, but he was kicked in his stomach, so he get injured and Ruijerd was angry. The reason is Ruijerd didn't like if someone hurt an innocent kid. Rudy said he shouldn't do such cruel things, because it wouldn't help the reputation of the spelled demons. Ruijerd made trouble, and he was scolded by Eris. Then Rudy said he should promise him to never do cruel things again. After that, the criminals told them they kidnapped pets. Suddenly, Ruijerd wanted to end the life of the criminals again, but Rudy stopped him. Also, he got a solution to save them. He asked them to team up with Rudy's party because he wanted to get higher rank quests. Then Ruijerd was against his plan, but Rudy explained him with the help of them. They can make more money and also improving the spelled tribe's reputation. Suddenly, Ruijerd making a fuss, but Eris scolded him. She explained him he shouldn't be a crybaby and tried to change his mind. So they were able to team up with the adventurer group, and they were promoted to C-ranks adventurer. Followed, Rudy ordered them to choose a B-rank quest, and he wanted to trade it with a F-rank quest. Suddenly the horse demon appeared, and he looked down on the 2 adventurer parties. He insulted them and wished them good luck to survive as adventurers. Then we see Roxy. She discovered a board with the names of the deaths caused by the huge mana explosion a few weeks ago. She was glad that Rudy and his family is alive. Suddenly she saw a letter of Paul and 2 adventurers appeared behind Roxy. So Roxy learned the both adventurers were friends of Paul. In the followed morning, Rudy accepted a monster hunt quest. Eris was motivated to beating up some monsters, and they were on the way to find the monster. Later, they entered a scary forest, and Eris discovered some adventurers. The 3 boys they had met a few days ago were arguing with a huge wild boar demon. Rudy asked them if they have saw some monsters, and he learned the others adventurers accepted the same quest. After that, the wild boar demon was angry because he told the kids to go home. The 3 demon boys didn't want to let him get all the reward, and he followed the wild boar demon. Then Rudy told Eris that it seems like their jobs are overlap, but he didn't want to go home. Suddenly Rudyard was worried about the 3 demon boys and wanted to help them. But Rudyard could convince Rudy to help the 3 boys. So Rudy planned to tail them, and Eris was disappointed with Rudy's decision, because she wanted to beat up some monsters. Then they followed the boys into the forest. Suddenly a monster spider appeared and scared them. They run away, and another monster tried to eat the 3 boys. Rudy didn't want to help them until they are desperate, because he got a big plan that only works after they are very desperate. So he waited to rescue the 3 boys. He planned to save the 3 boys in the last moment. Suddenly a demon boy was badly injured and was bleeding. Eris and Rudyard reacted immediately, and they ran toward the monsters, so they defeated them with strong attacks. Eris dodged the attack of the giant snake, and she used her superpower snake/attack to defeat the monster. After the fight, Rudyard asked the boy if he is okay. Then he went to Rudy and asked why he stopped him. Rudy was ashamed, and his answer made Rudyard angry. Rudyard said if he didn't had stop him, the boy would be alive. One of the demon boys tried to stop the fight between Rudy and Rudyard, but Rudyard ignored him, so he stopped Rudyard and said they are adventurers too and knew the danger. Kurt was sad and stopped them both to fighting each other. Then Rudyard apologized for treating him like a little kid. Later, Rudy's party escorted them to a safety place. They said goodbye and wanted to go back to the town. Rudy was ashamed for his selfish plan. Suddenly, they heard some fighting noises. So they rushed to the battlefield and saw many injured people. A red hood cobra was showing, and he was one of the Bloods. The cobra tried to eat a wild boar, and Rudy asked if they are ready for the battle. Following this, Rudy launched a magic attack against the hood cobra. Rudyard got the power of the crypts, and he slashed the giant cobra with his hood spear. Then Eris tried to launch an attack, but she failed. Rudy also missed his attack, and Rudyard could stop the cobra in time. As a result, Eris slashed the cobra into 2 pieces. Rudy cast a second spell, and he could manage to destroy the Bloodhood cobra with a strong explosion spell. So Eris checked if they have won, and she celebrated the victory against the cobra. Rudy thanked Rudyard, but he was still angry, because they didn't manage to rescue the adventurer. Back in the town, Rudy and his group were insulted by the horse demon. Suddenly, Rudy learned the horse demon discovered his secret to trade the quest with another party. The horse demon was like a Neville Papperman from iCarly, and he wanted to snitch them to the guild. So Rudy was threatened to give him money, otherwise he will tell his secret to the guild. Rudy was in big trouble, and he didn't what he should do now. Followed, he tried to find a solution, and said to Eris she didn't need to be worried. Rudy's biggest goal was to bring Eris safely home. Suddenly, he cast secretly a magic spell, and he risked his life to make Rudyard angry. Before Rudy could cast his spell, Rudyard revealed his true identity. The horse demon was afraid, and he caused everyone to run. Rudyard knew Rudy was in trouble, and he wanted to beat up the horse demon. Rudyard threatened him and didn't allow him to snitch on them. The horse demon fainted from fear, and Rudyard could solve Rudy's problems. Suddenly, guardians wanted to arrest Rudyard. He managed to escape the guardians and left the city. Following this, Rudy saw the boys, who were afraid too. Rudy asked them why they are scared. Then Rudy left them, and he was disappointed with their behavior. Kurt was ashamed, because he knew Rudyard had saved his life short time before. However, Rudy and Eris were searching Rudyard outside of the town, and they found him hiding behind a huge rock. Then Rudy apologized for doing such selfish decisions, but Rudyard wasn't blaming him. He knew Rudy just wanted to help him with his reputations as a spelled demon. Also, he understood Rudy risked his life too for protecting a beloved person. Rudyard and Rudy got along again. Then he explained Rudy what it is to be a real warrior, and he was grateful to have met a nice person like Rudyard. As a result, they both shook hands, and they looked forward to continue their journey. Eris also showed up and didn't want to be left out. In the next morning, Rudyard tried to find a barber, but he just shaved all his hair by himself. Rudy learned he wanted to save some money for buying real estates. Suddenly, Rudy found a Konoha headband, and Rudyard was promoted to a shinobi. Eris said she isn't so useless like Sakura, and Rudyard agreed. In the afternoon, they started to continue their journey. So they went to the next city, and Rudy was punished to peek at Eris in the changing room. In the followed days, Eris was excited to see the ocean for the first time. She immediately wanted to swim in the ocean. Then she decided to swim without swimsuit, and Rudy looked forward to see her naked. But Rudyard stopped Eris, because in the ocean are many dangerous monsters. Then they continued their journey and entered a new town. Rudy's group arrived in a port city. Followed we see Roxy's group, and behind them were Rudy. Rudy heard a familiar voice, but a man was chatting with him. Eris and Rudyard became in the journey very famous and got awesome nicknames. But the man didn't know the name of Rudy, and he got a lame name and he was disappointed. After that, they learned the trip with the ship is too expensive. At lunch, Rudy was deep in thought, and he told his friends they need to talk about money. The problem is the price for an adult is too expensive, and they couldn't pay the boat trip. Eris thought Rudy wanted to leave Rudyard behind, but he didn't have the intention to betray Rudyard. Suddenly, Rudy got the idea to sell his ward, and Rudyard apologized for being a burden. In the night they were sleeping, and Rudy tried to figure out a solution for their problem. Followed, Rudy met the man god in his dreams again, and he said sorry for causing him trouble last time. But he enjoyed to see Rudy was managed to solve his problems with Rudyard. Then man god told him tomorrow to buy food from a street vendor. He didn't told him what will happening, and said goodbye to Rudy. On the next morning, Eris trained with Rudyard her sword fighting skills. She wondered why Rudy wanted to split up, and Rudyard was distracted. As a result, Eris managed to win against Rudyard in the fight. She was very happy to getting stronger, and she celebrated her win against Rudyard. Meanwhile, Rudy was deep in thought, and he tried to figure out why man god told him to visit a food vendor. Suddenly he saw a woman with blue hair, and he wondered what Roxy is doing now. Then he bought food, and Roxy was running behind him. Suddenly he discovered a weird person who was starving and fainted out. So Rudy offered the mysterious person his food, and she was very grateful for Rudy's good deed. Following this, she acted suspiciously and asked about his name. Rudy introduced himself and learned the crazy little girl called herself the Great Emperor of the Demon World. So Rudy didn't want to be rude and played along. Kishirika loved his reaction to greeting her like an emperor and praised Rudy. After that, her eye was able to sense that Rudy is a pervert, and she made of him for being a naughty little boy. Then she offered him to grant a wish, so Rudy wished to be rich, but she was broke. As a result, Rudy made a joke and wanted to have some fun with her. She began to stripping off, but she stopped, because she had already a fiancé. Followed, she offered him to get a demon eye, and he accepted. Rudy didn't believe her thought she just make jokes. Out of nowhere, she grabbed his eye and changes one of his eye with a demon eye. After the operation, he realized he got a demon eye, and she said goodbye. So he gained the eye of foresight, and he got a headache by using his new demon eye. On the way back to his friends, he bumped into a man. The man was angry, and he insulted Rudy. Suddenly, Rudy saw the future, and he used a wind spell to save the man. The man realized Rudy had saved his life, and he let him past. In the evening, Rudyard told them he heard of Kishirika's name. Rudy learned she is a powerful demon and was surprised, because he thought she is just a crazy little brat. Followed, Rudy decided to stay in his room until he can control his demon eye. Eris was excited because she wanted to get a demon eye too. After a week, Rudy was able to use his demon eye, and he managed to awake his observation haki. Followed, he trained with Eris, and he wanted to test his new eye. Eris started to attack Rudy, but he could see the future moves of Eris, so he dodged all her attacks, and he was able to hit her. Eris didn't give up, and she used all of his skills to defeat Rudy. She wasn't able to counter his attack, and Rudy won the fight. After that, Eris tried to trick him and congratulated him. Rudy was able to counter her attack, and she was angry to lost again Rudy. Then Rudyard praised him for becoming a strong warrior with his demon eye. Suddenly, Rudy wanted to challenge Rudyard to a fight, but he wasn't able to beat him up with his demon eye. Later, Rudy told Rudyard about his loss against Rudyard. Eris replied he didn't need to comfort her, because she just wanted to catch up with him. In the night, Rudy knew he just was able to win against Eris with his demon eye. He was ashamed to make Eris sad, although she trained every day to become stronger. Then Rudy tried to sneak out, but Rudyard stopped him. Rudy replied he wanted to get out for doing some kinky things, but Rudyard knew his real intention was to sell his ward to pay the fees for the boat trip. Following this, Rudyard was disappointed with his decision to sell the ward, which means a lot to him. Rudyard knew Rudy wanted to solve the problem that he caused, so he told Rudy he isn't alone and they are a team. Rudy replied they haven't enough money for the proper fare and selling his staff is the best option. But Rudyard didn't want to let Rudy sell his staff for the problem which he had caused. He lectured Rudy, and they should find a solution together. Also, Rudyard told him he would follow all his decisions. Suddenly, Rudyard sensed a suspicious man, and Rudy shocked. Gallus offered to help Rudy because he was grateful that Rudy saved his life. In the days before, we see Roxy's group in an isekai Starbucks for adults. Alina wanted to hunt some men to have fun with them. Roxy saw Alina flirting with the men, and she asked herself if the men also would treating her like attractive women. Suddenly, a group of men appeared and asked Roxy to join their C-rank party. She rejected the offer and told them she is an A-rank mage. As a result, they realized she is the famous A-rank mage, Roxy. Alina teased her a bit and said she should have some fun with the three men. Later, Roxy asked the two friends of Paul, what was Paul like back in those days? They called Paul as scum, and Roxy wondered what he had did in the past to be called scum. After a few days, they got a lot of new information, and she was worried to heard about a party named Dead End. Alina told Roxy she got the information that Dead End is a handsome-looking man. Talhan told Roxy he got the information that Dead End is a party of 3-person. Followed Roxy asked about the main issue, and they hadn't find news about Paul's family. Talhan and Alina said Roxy didn't need to worry about Zenith, because she is a retired S-rank adventurer. On the next day, Roxy saw on the beach some kids playing together. She wondered how much Rudy has grown now. Afterwards, she discovered 2-person fighting each other. Followed, she was discovered by Rudyard and she ran away. She didn't saw Rudy and arrived in the motel room safely. Suddenly, she realized she was disturbing Alina, who had fun with a lot of guys. She didn't know what she should do, and she attacked them all with strong ice magic. After paying the repair for the inn, Roxy was broke. She said it's all Alina's fault. So Alina replied, someday Roxy will understand why she played with so many handsome guys. Followed, we see Gallus transported Rudyard on a boat. So Rudy and Eris sailed on a boat to the next town, but Eris caused him many troubles. He was scared if the boat was sinking like the Titanic, and he hoped to experience a romance event with Eris. In addition, he wanted to make Eris to his wife on an abandoned island and become a real man. But the reality is cruel. Eris was seasick and she thought she will die. Suddenly, Rudy was horny and he went to the bathroom. After going to the toilet, Eris noticed he smelled weird. Arriving in the next town, Eris was exhausted from the boat trip. She asked if Rudy could stay with her and use his healing spell, but Rudy replied he need to find Rudyard first, and he went outside. Followed, Rudy was running to an abandoned house of the smugglers to see his friend Rudyard. Afterwards, a man showed Rudy a hidden entry to the underground. He saw a suspicious place with many smugglers who played cards. Also, he discovered a huge magical dog. After that, he found Rudyard, and he had the idea to save all kids. Rudy didn't know if he should help Rudyard to beaten up all smugglers to save all kids. Suddenly, he said Rudy didn't need to get his hands dirty. He just need to wait after he had freed all kids. Followed Rudyard starting his plan to save all kids and beaten up all smugglers. Rudy was on his way to save 5 little girls. They thought Rudy is an enemy and one of the bad guys. Rudy told them he just want to rescue him. So he began to heal an injured girl, and he was distracted for a short moment. Suddenly they heard a weird noise, and all girls were afraid. Rudyard appeared and told him it's over. Rudy couldn't help everyone, and Rudyard was very sad because he couldn't save all of them. Then Rudy used his beast god language to communicate with them. On the way outside, a beast girl was shouting. She asked why they didn't have saved the white magical dog in the prison. So Rudy was on the way back to the hidden place, and he wanted to save the magical dog. Suddenly, he bumped into a strong barrier and wanted to use a spell to disable the barrier. Rudy managed to destroy the barrier, and the magical got a liking on him. As a result, Rudy was hugged by the dog and he realized how fluffy the dog is. Out of nowhere, a beast people appeared and he attacked Rudy with a strong attack. Rudy was knocked out and he couldn't move his body. They thought Rudy is a member of the smuggler. Followed, the leader found a trace of the kidnapped girls and they decided to split up. As a result, Rudy was kidnapped and the beast men wanted to punish Rudy. In the next morning, Rudy was living in a new hut and he felt like he was on vacation with his luxurious bed. He also had a luxurious toilet with a big hole for making big business. Also, he was served everyday delicious food that he enjoyed. But the reality is he was caught as a prisoner who was waiting for his penalty. Later on, he tried to find a way to escape, and the guardians didn't believe he is innocent. They looked down on him and treated him like a wild animal in a zoo. Few days later, he was exhausted by doing nothing. The beast people just lived their life happily and ignored him. Rudy gave up, and his plan was to hope his friends will save him. Also, he glared at the bouncing boobs of the guardian, and she hated him. In the afternoon, Rudy wondered why they taking so long to rescue him. Suddenly, 2 days later, a man appeared, and he was arrested with him. Rudy was naked and he acted like Teabag from Prison Break. But he wasn't in prison break and just asked the man why he is arrested. Then Rudy learned the new guy was arrested because he was gambling and they caught them by cheating. Followed Geese said Rudy is a famous criminal now and everyone heard about his funny case. In the night, Rudy proved his skill as Teabag and he forced Geese to give him a nice massage. Followed he asked Geese if he can help him to break out because he's getting worried about his friends. Geese refused to help him, but Rudy wanted to free himself without Geese help. Suddenly, he realized the cute girl isn't on her position and he wondered where she is going. Following this, they saw the trees were burning and Reese asked if Rudy was causing the fire. After that, Rudy produced a key to open the prison out of woods, so Rudy and his new friend Geese managed to break out and run away together. Meanwhile, the Beast People were attacked by bandits. Then he was shocked to see the horrible scene on the battlefield. Rudy was angry because they arrested him in a little cell, but he still couldn't allow the bandits to kidnap the innocent Beast People. As a result, Rudy decided to rescue the Beast People, and Geese was ready to help Rudy by his plan. After that, they started to fight, and Geese managed to defeat a bandit. Rudy began to cast a strong water spell. He was an isekai firefighter, and he was able to extinguish the fire. Geese was impressed by Rudy's water spell, and he was ready to fight against the bandits. Suddenly more bandits appeared, but the Beastmen, who caught Rudy, showed up and he wanted to beat up all bandits. After defeating some bandits, he asked Rudy if he will support him to rescue the kidnapped children. So Rudy worked together with the strong Beast People and they rushed towards the enemies. They were able to defeat the henchmen, but Gallus used a little girl as hostage. Rudy learned Gallus planned to use him and his friends to find the village of the Beast People. Also, he said he will got a lot of money by selling the girls to the nobles, and asked if Rudy want to change the side. Rudy refused his offer and he made Gallus angry. As a result, he threw the girl as a bait and started to attack the Beast People. Gallus managed to defeat many warriors and he badly injured the strongest of the Beast People. Then Gallus revealed he is a famous criminal and told Rudy he should give up. Then Gallus had the plan to kidnap the girl and Rudy was scared, because he wasn't skilled in combat fighting like Roger. The little girl cried and she was asking for help, but Rudy was frozen in fear. Suddenly, the sacred beast appeared and was on the way to attack Gallus. Rudy also attacked Gallus with a magic spell and they teamed up to defeat Gallus. Following this, Rudy's heart is poking and he told Gallus he will wing against him. Gallus started to attack Rudy, but he used his observation haki to anticipate his enemy's movement. So Rudy dodged all his attacks and he tried to launch and counterattack. Suddenly Gallus used a dagger and he injured Rudy on his leg. Gallus was sure to finish off Rudy, but the magical dog rescued him. Also, he lured Gallus into a trap and he was distracted with sand. Rudy immediately cast his strongest explosion spell and he hit Gallus with all his power. As a result, Gallus was knocked out and Rudy won the fight, but he had no mana left and he fainted out. In the next morning, Rudy woke up and Eris was happy that he is alive. In addition, she congratulated him for defeating a North Saint. Afterwards, Gaius apologized for treating him like a criminal. Then Eris explained the story what they have experienced. Rudyard helped the Beast People to fighting the bandits group, and he had a rough time too. So Rudy learned Eris was protecting the kids and she find new friends. Eris was excited to arrive home and tell his grandfather about her journey. Meanwhile, Soros got the death penalty because he failed to respond appropriately to the mana disaster. The royal family looked down on him, and Soros wished Eris and Rudy happiness if they still living. In the followed days, Rudy would sneak a peek at Eris and her friends while bathing, but Gaius asked him what he'd do in the box. Gaius smelled Rudy as sexual aroused, and he wanted to punish him, so Rudy apologized. Later they ate dinner and Rudy was happy to see Eris have fun with her new friend. After dinner, Rudy was playing with Dog Lucky. In the meantime, Eris taught her new friends the human language. Rudy was very proud to see his troublemaking student become a teacher too. Then Gaius thanked her for being a friend to his daughter Tona. Suddenly he discovered the ring of Jelaine and Eris told him about Jelaine. Followed, Rudy asked them if they knew anything about her. Gaius was surprised she is alive and he told them Jelaine abandoned the Doldia's duty. In addition, he called Jelaine a disgrace to their people and he was very angry against her. After he left the hut, Eris followed him because he insulted Eris' beloved master. Eris ran outside and said Jelaine is a kind person and she always protected her. Also, she said he isn't allowed to badmouth Jelaine, and Eris started to cry. Rudy tried to cheer her up and she asked Rudy why Gaius called her a disgrace. Suddenly, Gaius asked Rudy if Jelaine become an admirable person. Rudy replied he also respects Jelaine and confirmed she is a kind person now. In the next morning, Eris recalled the last memories of Jelaine. She missed Jelaine and hoped she is fine after the Mana disaster. Then Tona appeared, and she knew more about her aunt Jelaine. Eris learned Jelaine is the little sister of her dad. Following this, Eris said Jelaine is her sword instructor and she's really nice. Tona replied her dad always said she shouldn't become like Jelaine. Also, she hates the sword practice every day because her dad get angry if she didn't practice. Suddenly Eris replied she is just like her, because she also hates study. But she said she is grateful to Jelaine for showing her the way of sword. Tona was motivated and asked Eris to teach her swordsmanship like Jelaine. Tona's cousin said her father will be mad if she trained the sword style of her aunt. Then Eris wanted to show Tona some sword skills, and Tona's father was outside. Later, Eris trained with Tona sword fighting, and she showed her everything she learned by Jelaine. Meanwhile, Rudy was watching them both, and Gaius showed up. He told Rudy his daughter always refused to learn swordsmanship. Also, he asked about Jelaine, and Rudy told him she got the title Sword Queen. Gaius was felt guilty to badmouth his little sister. After a few months, Tona was taught by Eris swordsmanship, and she made a lot of progress. At lunch, Eris had a lot of fun with her new friends, and she teased Tona. Suddenly, Tersena was looking sad because she knew Eris will leave them soon. Tona asked Eris to stay forever with them, but Eris replied she need to go home to find her family. Meanwhile, Rudy created a Rudyard Barbie, and he played with his new friend Lucky. Then Rudy was told the sacred beast is aroused. He realized he should stop playing with Lucky and was embarrassed. Suddenly, Tersena told them, Eris is fighting with Tona outside. Tona got mad because she didn't want Eris to leave them. After they stopped the fight, Rudy noticed Eris held back her power against Tona. Following this, Tersena told Tona she needs to apologize to Eris, but she refused. Also, her father appeared, and she asked her about the training with Eris. Followed, Gaius told about Jelaine's childhood. He said she was a burden because she refused to study or practice swordsmanship. One day a swordsman took her away from the village, and he regretted that he didn't say goodbye. He said to Tona she will regret her decision too if she doesn't get along with Eris. Followed, we see Rudy asking Eris if she didn't have to do something before they leave the village. Rudy heard the voices of Tona and Tersena, and he went for a walk with dog Lucky. Then the girls were sneaking into the room of Eris. Eris asked what they are doing in her room, so Tona apologized to Eris and she hoped they can get along again. Eris accepted her apology and Tona was very happy. Then they showed Eris the self-made Barbies of Rudy and Eris. In the next day, Rudy's group were ready to leave the village. Then the chief to the village thanked Rudyard for his great help, and Rudy was surprised about their friendship. Behind Rudy, the girls were crying and she promised to visit them someday again. Suddenly, Gaius wanted to spar with Eris. He asked Eris to show him the swordsmanship of his little sister. Eris accepted his request, and they started to fight against each other. So Lucky started to bark, and the two began with the fight. They crossed the swords and stopped moving. Suddenly, Eris was angry, and Gaius thanked her for showing his little sister's swordsmanship skills. Afterwards, Gaius said, next time she should visit them again with Jelaine. Following this, Rudy and his friends leave the village. Suddenly, Geese appeared. He told Rudy he escort them to the city Millis. Later, Rudy thought the way looks a little bit strange, and Geese told them the story about the legends of Millis. Rudy saw a weird stone, and Geese said it's a monument for the 7 great powers. So Geese explained Rudy about the 7 strongest fighters in the world. Rudyard replied in his childhood he trained and hoped to become one of the 7 great powers too. After many days on the journey, they soon arrived in the capital Millis. Followed, Geese discovered the capital, and he wanted to say goodbye. Suddenly, Eris asked Geese to teaching her cooking if they met again. Rudy was surprised and realized she wants to become a good housewife.